Years ago, the mentally ill were locked away in places where one could expect the unexpected. Compassionate care, humane treatment, activities and games, doctors and nurses who listened to patients, who could stroll in gardens and enjoy nature, experience peace and quiet, and hopefully get well. Or they experienced a different kind of care. Strange experimental therapies, devices and machines designed to shock, injure, and scare patients back to sanity. Lobotomy, sterilization, practices doctors were urged by their peers to implement without pity or restraint. And history shows they did. Today, these places are deserted, and yet the mentally ill represent a greater percentage of the population than ever. How did we get here? Let's go back. In the 50s, scientists discovered drugs. Though they did not cure psychosis, drugs controlled psychotic behaviors. They sedated patients, thorazine, lithium, their tranquilizers, and with them the psychopharmacology revolution began. In the decades that followed, antipsychotics, antidepressants, an endless stream of drugs were devoured by the mentally ill as the revolution expanded. They were moved home to small community-based facilities or ended up on the streets or in jail. New drugs had less severe side effects and were prescribed for a growing list of mental illnesses to ever younger and older patients. And that's where we find ourselves today. 50%, half of all Americans have been diagnosed with a mental illness. We spend $80 billion a year on our mental health, 25% of which goes to the drug companies. It's an epidemic. So, are we better off?
One of the best books that I know that should have got a Pulitzer Prize is a book called Mad in America by Robert Whitaker. In third world countries where drugs are not available and they're unaffordable, so when someone has a psychotic episode, which any of us are subject to, you can be sleep deprived or abused or solitary confinement. In third world countries, the family just takes care of them. They get them good food and they get them sleep, and etc. And they don't start them on drugs. And those people, in large percentages, never have another trouble the rest of their life. It was a temporary psychotic episode. They are nurtured and they get over it. Mm-hmm. In first world countries like America, the first thing that happens with a psychotic episode is you go to a mental institution, you get on drugs right away, and you're told you have a brain chemical disorder, probably genetic, probably inherited it, and you have it, now you're going to have it the rest of your life, and you need to be on drugs the rest of your life. Hardly any of those ever get better. So the drugs make permanent the problem.
What's so compelling is every few years some new treatment comes along heralded as a cure and then is shown to be ineffective or harmful. From bloodletting to dangerous water treatments to electroshock still in practice today. Now we're going from one drug to the next without any test on the long-term effects. Are we entering just another phase? What causes mental illness? Common sense says psychological trauma, abuse, cruelty, neglect, combat, rape, crime, broken hearts, and disappointment. Life isn't easy. There is no evidence, though, that it has anything to do with a chemical imbalance, so why treat it with medication alone? Drugs only mask symptoms, and some prescriptions are for life. Granted, life may be shortened as psychotropics are known to cause premature death. Society doesn't always know how to deal with the mentally ill any more than a family. They're disruptive, destructive to others and themselves. In some cases, drugs are a good quick fix, but they can make things worse long term. Another thing is laws that keep people in hospitals. They have to be medication compliant or they can't get out. Families can go bankrupt if someone has a psychotic episode for a good reason, like a divorce or a death in the family. So there are real economic and human rights issues at stake. Children in the US consume 4 times the psych medication as the rest of the world combined, and we're medicating the elderly at alarming rates. Something's wrong. How can we compete with the rest of the world when half of our population is on drugs? Meanwhile, the medical industry rakes in hundreds of billions unchecked. I've written, directed, and produced 2 feature films and understand this process. The best approach is to make the film independently, screen it on the festival circuit, and secure distribution. My attorney Jonathan Gray's firm has documentaries playing at festivals every year. I'm asking for your help using Kickstarter, this incredible resource, to find support for a film that aims to shed light on an important issue and really help people. Please support in any way you can and spread the word. That's the only way we'll reach our funding goal. If half of all Americans have been diagnosed with a mental illness, you or someone you know needs to see this film.